Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /Entitled People, where people truly believe it's all about them and no one else matters. And in today's episode, it's another wild one, guys. We've got entitled exes, entitled family members, Karen parents forcing their sick kiddos on strangers, and one OP shares a situation that they're in where they realize the person they married is a super Karen. Guys, I hope you enjoy the stories, don't shake your heads too hard, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. This was years ago when we first began our divorce proceedings. It was an abusive, controlling, very bad marriage. But I was in university when we met, taking courses to get into my now career. I worked through most of my degree, so I was able to pay for myself and my tuition. The last year of my degree, it became overwhelming to work at the same time, so my ex told me that I should quit my job and he would support us. So I thought, okay, great. I quit, and I used my savings to help with my side of the bills. I also did all the household chores and made sure I held up my end of things. Fast forward to when I graduate and I get multiple offers and I start working right away. Our marriage fell apart about 7 months after I started. He had multiple affairs, plus the abuse and everything else. So I left and I went no contact. Our first time seeing each other was 15 months later at a mediation meeting with our respective lawyers. It only took him 15 minutes to begin shouting and cursing at me, and then he demanded all of my income. His reason being is, quote, she would be nowhere without me. Without me suggesting she quit her job and focus on her education, she wouldn't be in this position she's in. I gave her her career and I only helped with the expectation that I would be reaping the benefits of her salary for the foreseeable future. The entitlement, right? Basically, both lawyers were dumbfounded and his scramble to get him to stop talking. I still chuckle to myself when I think about that meeting. As terrifying as it was at the time, it's funny to think about now. So yeah, that's my little story of how my entitled ex-husband thought that I owed him my entire income for the next 5 years. First off, I just want to say that I'm glad OP can find humor in that situation now that she's had time to heal. Good frickin' riddance is what I say. Secondly, oh boy, the self-entitlement of some people knows no bounds. You are nothing without me, so just give me all the money that you're making now since you're working. Like, do some people seriously not hear themselves when they talk? And for all who are wondering how the ex's lawyer scrambled to defend that situation, they write, he went into panic mode and tried to explain to him that that's not how it works at all. The meeting promptly ended and the lawyer fired him as a client. He went on to represent himself through the rest of the divorce. So this isn't my story. My grandfather told me this story. My grandfather was friends with a guy in the 80s who tried to be a good husband and father to his family. But his wife was crazy and his younger son was a complete jerk. To make things easier, I'll refer to the father as PF for poor father because of how things played out for him. The ex-wife will be called Karen and the jerk son will be Jason. There is also an elder good son, Jacob, but he doesn't have a big part in the story. So anyways, the poor father's wife was absolutely crazy. She was physically and verbally abusive, also narcissistic, absurdly entitled, and self-destructive on top of it. She refused to seek help for any of it, and instead, she would just pass the blame to say it was all poor father's fault and spread lies about him to anyone who would listen. And only his good son ever really sided with him. Eventually, poor father reaches his limit on the abuse from Karen and he filed for divorce. During this time, his wife began making up blatant lies and allegations of battery. His youngest son also refused to even be a witness in his defense. This resulted in his wife getting the house and many other things in the divorce. However, she still wasn't done with him. Poor father moved over 100 miles away with his good son deciding to move with him, but Jason sided with his mother and stayed with her. Not long after the divorce, she went completely psycho. She would do things to frame poor father to make people think that he was stalking and laying hands on her. She would come running out of her house in the middle of the night screaming, saying poor father was inside her home and attacking her. She even ransacked the house and she hurt herself to make it look more convincing to police. This, of course, made life living hell for poor father. He got arrested multiple times on charges of assault. However, he was able to prove his alibi a few times because he was a 2-hour drive between his and his ex-wife's house. This resulted in his ex-wife being investigated for her crazy. This finally made her stop. She sadly didn't face many consequences for lying to police. Eventually, the good son moves out to start college, and not long after, Jason calls his father, begging him to let him move in with him, because his mother was making him crazy. Jacob claimed that he was sorry for not sticking up for his dad during the divorce, and he wanted to make amends. Poor father thought that this was a chance for him and Jason to finally have a better relationship as father and son. And things went great for a year after Jason moved in. One evening, however, when poor father came home late from work, there was police at his house. Apparently, Jason held a party with other kids from his high school, with underage drinking using alcohol that his father stored in the house. When the police came to the door due to complaints, he told police that his father not only arranged the party, but also allowed them access to the booze. To say that poor father was flabbergasted as police put him in handcuffs yet again was an understatement. When he asked why his son had done this, Jason just responded with, "Because you divorced mom. You deserve everything bad to happen to you." That's right, Jason had spent an entire year planning to frame his father just to take some revenge on him for leaving his mother. The poor father was arrested on multiple charges. Police couldn't prove that he orchestrated the party, but he couldn't disprove it either, as he wasn't home the entire day. So he was hit with a citation and he had to go to court to make his case. Shortly after the incident, Jason went running back to his mom. As far as I know, poor father pretty much cut contact with them both, but the damage was done. Many people still believed him to be a wife-beater that also let his son drink while underage, and it nearly ruined his life and his career. Eventually, as time went by, people did forget. But poor father still had a decade of his life ruined by his own family. Yeah, reading this post, I can't imagine how poor father felt when his own son betrayed him like that, guys. Like, what a punch to the gut. I just hope his ex-wife and younger son eventually got some karma coming their way, because what they were doing to that poor man was horrible. I also hope the younger son realizes one day that mom was indeed the one painting dad in a bad light when she was the problem. But yeah, sadly it does happen a lot, guys. Like, I used to work with this guy whose wife did the exact same thing to him. Like, the day he filed for divorce because he caught his wife cheating on him was the day his wife also decided that she was going to ruin his life. And listen, you guys know that I never ever condone violence or ill will towards anyone. I'm just sharing this comment that a lot of people seem to agree with. This person says, that kid and the wife should be hit by a train. Let me know your thoughts on that comment. So I moved out of my parents' house last year. My parents have kept my childhood bedroom as it is, with all of my old toys, belongings, my clothes, etc., because I go home to visit most weekends and help around the house. This includes some collector edition Barbies and dolls that my dad bought for me when I was younger. I keep them in their boxes, stored on a high shelf. There is about 10 dolls, most of which are collector's items now because of their age and condition. I haven't thought about selling them because I just like keeping things that my dad bought for me. Well, this past weekend, I was visiting my mom, and she brought some of her friends over. One particularly entitled friend, who we'll call Jane, brought her granddaughter, a 5-year-old. I told my mom to not let the child in my room after a bad experience with kids taking my belongings and breaking them. Anyways, I was downstairs, kind of hanging out with everyone. Eventually, I hear Jane taking the granddaughter upstairs. I then heard them opening doors and talking. I didn't go upstairs right away until I heard her say something about dolls. So that's when I went upstairs and I asked them both to leave my room. But Jane was already in my closet at this point, and she was pointing at the dolls. Of course, she pointed at the boxes of Barbies. She then pulls one off the shelf and she shows it to her granddaughter and proceeds to start opening the box, and she told me that she wanted to play with it. When I stopped her and told her, no, it's in the box for a reason, she seemed really irritated at me, and she hands the box back to me. She then left my room, and the child started crying and saying she wanted to play with that exact doll. So I went through my things, and I found some of the dolls that I'd opened as a kid and played with, and I offered them to her downstairs. But she kept insisting on the princess doll in the box. Now, they didn't go back upstairs, but it did leave me feeling a little anxious about my room. My mom's telling me to put a lock on my door because Jane visits often and she tends to wander around the house. But I'm baffled that she would go into someone's house and think it's okay to start going into bedrooms and touching people's stuff. I'm also from South Asian background, by the way, and this tends to be the attitude of some older women. They don't understand collectible culture or sentimentality to gifts. They think that they're able to do whatever they want, whenever they want, and open whatever they want. We installed a lock this morning on my bedroom door, and my mom warned her friend to not go in my room in the future. I also live in a very small condo. It's not big enough for me to bring all my belongings there. I've left a lot of clothing and personal items with my parents. Yeah, in my opinion, forget locking the door at all, OP, because mom should tell Jane, until you can learn to not snoop around my house, you will not be welcome in my home. Because you know what it is, right? Like, it's OP's collectibles today, and maybe another day, it could be mom's jewelry or her precious keepsakes from her bedroom. That said though, like, I could never fathom in a million years going into someone's home and just snooping around their bedrooms and closets. Like, where are your frickin' manners, lady? And this person shares their comment. They say, as someone from India, yes, it happens a lot. The last time my uncle came, his kids tore my register containing group theory notes to make paper planes and other paper stuff without asking my mother. They just decided among themselves that that's probably not that important. When I came back and I saw all my notes all over, and when I confronted my uncle and his wife, they actually got mad that I wasn't respecting them enough. And if it was that important, that I should have taken them to college with me, as if it was my fault. Even when my mom confirmed that she didn't give the kids permission to go through my shelves and desk, they stayed adamant that it was my fault and not their bratty kids' fault. Almost a year ago since that happened, and I've never talked to those people again. This happened a few years ago. My son was in his first year of preschool, and almost on a daily basis, I volunteered in his classroom. My great aunt happened to be my son's teacher. On this particular day, it was very cold outside, and we were in the middle of flu season. This one child came in, and in a sea of children, it was not obvious that he was sick. It was only when his mother had left and the boy was sitting at the table for breakfast that we could tell that he wasn't feeling well. I'll call him Nice Kid because he really was a sweet boy. The nice kid looked pale and he had a runny nose. So I went over to him and I said, "Hi, how are you? Did you enjoy the snow day yesterday?" The kid says yes, but he said it really drowsily. I ask, "Are you feeling okay, bud?" He says, "Not really." I then reached out and I placed my hand on his forehead, and the poor boy was on fire. At this point, I call my aunt over and I say, "Hey, I think this kid's sick. He's really hot." My aunt gets a handheld thermometer and took his temperature. It was 102 degrees. 38.8 degrees Celsius for anyone who uses Celsius. The school didn't have a nurse on site, so we took the boy to a small lobby. I gave him a cup of water to sip on, while my aunt calls his mom. My aunt gets a hold of her and she says, "Hello, Miss So-and-so. This is Aunt from Nice Kids School. I need you to return my call as soon as possible. Your son has a 102-degree fever and he can't be at school when he's sick. Please call me back at this number." We continue to call her periodically, and finally, after about 30 minutes of trying to get a hold of her, she got through. And this is the following conversation. My aunt says to her, "Hi, I'm so glad you picked up. Listen, your son is sick. He's got a 102-degree fever. We need you to come pick him up." And this is when the boy's mother says, "Yeah, I know he's sick. He's had a fever for 2 days now, but I don't have anyone to watch him. I'm already 45 minutes away, and I'm late for my lunch date." My aunt says to her, "I understand you have plans, but I think your son's a little more important. If you knew he was sick, then he should have never have come to school. I'm sorry, but you have to come pick him up." That's when Karen says, "Well, he's gonna have to wait until I'm back in town. I'm gonna be a few hours. Just let him nap somewhere in a corner or something. He'll be fine." At this point, my aunt tells her, "Ma'am, I think we have a misunderstanding. You need to pick him up right now. He cannot be here." The Karen says, "Like I said, I'll pick him up when I'm back in town." She then hangs up the phone, and my aunt tries several times to call her back with no answer. After another 30 minutes, the nice kid's temperature has jumped to 103 degrees, and he's acting very lethargic. At this point, we all decide to call an ambulance. Within 10 minutes, the kid's loaded into the ambulance and he's on his way to a hospital. After this, I took my son home and we stayed home for a few days, just to ensure we didn't catch whatever the kid might have had. Now, my aunt's not allowed to tell me what happened to Karen after this, but I do know that CPS got involved and the kid did recover. From that day on, his grandparents were the ones to drop him off and pick him up. I've not seen nor heard from his mom since. Yeah, I think it's safe to say that Karen might no longer have custody of her kid. Like, this is how to lose your child custody 101. And honestly, guys, this post makes me so freaking mad. Like, you would rather go for lunch than to stay home and take care of your sick child, Karen? Like, some people are super duper unfit parents, and this person comments, "I used to be a school secretary, and one day, I called a parent because a kid had a fever of 101. I got a dad who then said he relapsed because he stayed up all night playing video games, so he can just stay there where he belongs. I just told him, sir, he can't stay in school with a fever over 100. If someone doesn't pick him up, we'll consider it child abandonment and contact CPS. The dad then picked the kid up." Some frickin' people, guys, right? And if you thought that was over the top, listen to this post. So for some context, in my early 20s, I ran a free after-school program for kids out of a community center. This program was for kids ages 8 to 12 whose parents were currently undergoing a messy divorce. With the kids, myself and another volunteer discussed handling anger, prepared them for joint custody, changes in finances, what alimony and child support were, etc. At the time, we were a few weeks into the class. I had 8 kids who were attending, and 8 is a great number, because do you know how many things come in packs of 8? It meant I bought stuff in those 8 packs so each kid would have something, and I didn't waste money on spares. So this one afternoon, the kids are coming in, and this one parent that I haven't met with an unknown kid comes by, and she sorta drops the kid off without another word to me or her child. It's been a few years, but here's the conversation I remember. I just say, ma'am, what are you doing?" The entitled mom responds, "What?" I say, "Hi, I don't think we've met. Your son's not enrolled in this class currently. You can't just drop him off with me." She then says, "I was told this class is free." I say to her, "Yes, it is, but it's not a daycare. You have to enroll your child first and at the beginning of the term. I can't just watch any child who comes by. There are things I need to know, like allergies, emergency contacts, and, you know, his name." The woman then says, "Well, you can ask me right now." I tell her, "I'm sorry, but the class is starting right now, so I can't. But you can enroll him in the next term. You can find information on how to do that at so-and-so." The woman just rolls her eyes, and she says, "I have an appointment. Can't you just take him?" And for the record, the parents were supposed to be enrolled in the class across the hall, which is another class to help them through the divorce. They can't just use us for free childcare. I just tell the woman I can't. Besides, I didn't know I'd have another student today, so I don't have enough supplies or snacks for him. The Karen then goes on and says, "Oh, he doesn't need any snacks. He won't mind." I just tell her, "Ma'am, of course he's gonna mind. All of these kids are eating all this stuff, and they have juice boxes. And all the other kids will have workbooks, and he doesn't. It's not fair to him." Besides, it's not really safe for me to watch a child that I have no information for, so you can sign him up for the next term. At this point, Karen gets all huffy and she says, fine. She then grabs her kid and storms off, and that was the end of it, or so I thought. A few minutes later, I'm working with the kid and the other volunteer. She's setting up the next activity. I can then see the door opening a crack, and the same kid as before is shoved in, and then the door slams. This is when the other volunteer and I share a what the F look. But I open the door and look out, and the entitled mom is booking it down the hallway. I scream and say, ma'am. Without turning around, she screams back, I'll be back in a few hours. Never mind that the class is only an hour long. So me, half running after her, say, ma'am, if you don't come and collect your son, I will call the police about an unaccompanied minor. He will not be here when you get back. Hearing me say that, she stops, sighs, and then turns around and pegs me with a glare. She then says, you're being so unflexible, you know. This is terrible customer service. To that, I respond with, you're not a customer, please take your son. The Karen grabs her kid's hand and she starts storming off while yelling, I can't believe you would call police on a child. What kind of teacher are you? What's your name? I'm gonna tell your boss how horrible you were to me and my son. And to this day, I do wonder if she attempted to talk to my boss about my behavior. Or imagining the look on her face when she found out that the boss of the program was me. So here's a quick backstory. I married my current wife, who we'll call Karen, and she had 3 kids prior to us meeting. She has 2 sons, one who's 13 and one who's 12, and a daughter who's 10. We also have 2 kids together. That said, a few years ago, kid number 1 decides to make up stories about me to his teachers, saying that I've been beating him and his siblings. Child Services did a thorough investigation and they found it to be all made up. And ever since, I've kept my distance from any parental roles. I also have to admit, I find their entitlement incredibly annoying, and I do lose my temper from time to time. Most of the time though, I just walk away. Also, I don't know how relevant, but their biological dad has been out of the picture until 2 years ago. He's since won enough custody, and he refuses to work, so we have to pay him child support, even though the kids are with us more than half the time. So that said, here's the story. Due to how our routines work, it's up to me to get the little kids ready each morning. I also take them to their respective school and daycare. However, all 3 stepkids are expected to get themselves ready and catch their buses. Kid number 1 always leaves to go to his grandparents because he gets to make a lunch consisting of nothing but sugar. Kid number 2 usually follows but didn't this morning. Instead, he thought it was a great idea to fool around. Now, I don't prompt them or tell them what to do because, as their mother always says, you can't force my kids to do anything. They have to want to do the right thing. So I'm just going about my business, not really paying attention to them. And then out of the blue, kid number 2 starts yelling at me saying, you dumb idiot. You should have told me how late I was. Now I'm gonna miss my bus, and it's all your fault, you a-hole. And yes, these kids are allowed to and often swear at me, and their mom has done nothing about it. This tirade goes on for a while. I just ignore it, but in my head, I'm getting mad. I then call his grandma and tell her to take him to school as she works there. I then call my wife and I let her know what happened, and this is the text message I got. She says, I'm sorry he got pissed at you this morning. I just think you need to let it go. We know that when he's stressed, he doesn't deal with things properly. And about him calling you an a-hole, perhaps I talk to him about it later when he's calm. Anyways, no one needs the stress. I read it and don't say anything. So come later in the day, I'm not happy at all over cleaning up and doing everything for the kids. My wife notices this and she gets mad at me for being upset. And this is what happened. She says to me, you need to let it go. I respond, but it's happening all the time. Why don't you do something about it? Her response is because my kids need to choose to do the right thing. I just say, what? She then says, what are you going to do about it? At this point, I say, I'll leave if it doesn't stop. She then says, I'm not stopping you, but it's not fair that everyone keeps telling me what to do with my kids. I tell her, well, doing nothing about their bad behavior is a bad parent move. She then says, no it isn't, I know they'll do the right thing. You just need to let it go. My response is, so you're telling me that I have to make a change and allow them to keep treating me like crap and letting them walk all over me? She then says, yes, because they're kids. After that, she left, and I'm sitting in the bathroom thinking that I don't feel anything anymore. I just feel numb from it, and I'll update when there's more. Update number 1. So after I wrote this, I decided to call my parents. My dad gave me some great advice to use my audio recorders whenever I interact with the kids and gather evidence. In a couple of weeks, I should sit down with their mom and a third party as a mediator and go through the evidence with her. In very black and white terms, I need to ask what she's gonna do, and then give the ultimatum right then and there. If she says no, I walk. In the meantime, I'll be gathering my resources to prepare for the worst. I would also like to point out, as a couple of you say, they believe the kid about me being abusive. Here's a quick story behind that. The way our house is designed, the kids' room is at one end and our shared office space is at the exact opposite. I was in the office with the mom working on something. The kid number 1 didn't know that I was in there. He then starts throwing himself against the door and yelling, "Oh my goodness, stop hitting me." I just looked at my wife and both of us recorded it on our phones. What the kid wanted to do was get his mom to break up with me because at the time I was enforcing a chore chart. Update number 2. So today, the wife and I had another blowout, all over me standing up for the boundaries I've put in to protect myself. It was about an hour of her justifying to me that her kids can say whatever they want to me and that I'm lucky they aren't ones to hit me. My wife then got angry with me for having a verbal discussion in private with her in our own home, all because she can't put her thoughts together properly. Me, trying to make sure I haven't missed anything, then said, maybe we need marriage counseling. Her response is, if you think counseling is needed, you can go by yourself and fix you. There's nothing wrong with me. Thank you very much. And seriously guys, I know my rose-tinted glasses have splintered by now. All I see is an entitled, spoiled person that shares my last name and is raising my kids. I'll be seeing a lawyer this week and organizing my physical needs. I'll keep you updated. Last update. So where I left off, I was looking into a lawyer and I ended up leaving, and wow, the gaslighting that came from that. As you all know, we have 2 kids together, and she has 3 kids that have since gotten progressively worse, and she's allowed them to get worse. During the stage where all the fun adult planning had to be discussed with the split, she decides that she would keep saying, my boys deserve to be in a house with their mom, hinting that she'll take the house. She also says, since it's your decision, you need to go, and you need to work out the financial side of everything, which includes daycare and school fees for the boys. I just said to her that I'll pay half of their needs. Anything extra needs to be agreed upon prior to any decisions. And that did not go down well. She then said, the kids deserve to be able to do what they want when they want. My response was, yes, if they earn it and we can jointly afford it. She just tells me I'm being greedy with my budget, that if she managed my money, they could do whatever she wanted them to do. And yes, she did let it slip that she wanted them to do things. Anyways, moving forward, I have my kids in the morning and afternoons. With all the things we've gone through lately, the boys are so well adjusted, and I honestly can't get over how well they're dealing with it. I'm still waiting on court dates, so I hope the legal side of it goes well, as I don't think I can take any more hits this year. Let's hope for a win. What a roller coaster that was, guys, and OP never did come back with an update after this, so I do hope that all went well. But yeah, just reading this post, I'm surprised OP didn't snap sooner. And how he didn't recognize things before he tied the knot and had kids, I have no clue. Like, it couldn't have just been an overnight thing, right? But again, maybe OP just put up with it, and it just built and built and built until he couldn't take it anymore. Like, you can only handle so much of someone else's kid crapping all over you and showing no respect. And with the mom refusing to do anything about it, I don't blame OP one bit. Guys, let me know your thoughts on this post. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/entitled people episode, another one where psycho Karens are wishing OP's grandma passes so they can have money. It's such a wild episode, so go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.